Welcome back to the South African Morning. Now, the elections are heating up with smaller parties and independents vying for your votes. Now, will there be an outright winner in the major metros, or is this a dynamic that will split and lead to coalitions? Now, in a recent survey that we've done with Ipsos, we took a look at how people feel about coalitions, and this is some of the data that has come out. So if we take a look at the general feelings about coalitions, 37% of people that were surveyed in this particular survey say that they will support the coalitions, but then a huge chunk of them right at the end say, I want to see what happens first before I decide to support any coalition. And then if we take a look at the age group of people that are willing to support the coalitions, we're seeing a big chunk of that being the older cohort of voters or registered voters willing to support the coalitions. And then also an interesting one here, the younger people are saying we want to see how this pans out. So if we take a look at the different provinces when it comes to the coalitions, a lot of the rural provinces are willing to support coalitions, and then of course that varies. So now let's take a look at the other element about which supporters are likely to support coalitions. We saw the ANC supporters coming in at around 41%. I found that very interesting. DA supporters at around 33%. EFF also quite an interesting figure there. Thought it might be a lot less, 39%. And then, of course, we go on to the other parties. And then if we go to the extreme one where it says, I first want to see how it works before anything happens, we're sitting at around 41% for the other parties. And then, of course, these are the most contested metros that we are seeing here. And in Johannesburg and Tshwane, as well as Nelson Mandela Bay, we are seeing an interesting support for coalitions. So let's unpack this further now with Ipsos SA Director Marie Harris. And we're hoping we're going to be joined by a political analyst a little later on in the conversation, and that is Joubert. Marie, thank you for your time this morning. I want to start with the fact that older people are likely to support coalitions more than young people. I found that very interesting in this particular set of data.
Yeah, that is interesting if you look at the fact that 43% of older people, 55 to 75, say that they will support coalitions fully. I think they just have more experience with politics and political developments in the country than young people. And a lot of people actually say, I just wish the parties will work together and get this sorted out. So I think that is where that sentiment comes from. And they are a little bit more forgiving, perhaps, than younger people are. Because as we have seen before in this series, young people are not necessarily going to come in droves to come and vote on Monday. And people of, I say this with apprehension, middle-aged and older people will be more of the voters than young people will be.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, Marie, because in 2016, when we saw that a lot of coalitions had to be created because of the results came out, a lot of it was a disaster. And yet, like you say, people are a little bit more forgiving and they're willing to give it another chance. I think another one that came out as an important element here, Marie, is the rural provinces being more likely to be accepting of these coalitions. Talk us through that set of data.
I think the fact in the rural provinces is that they know that there are not that many players who actually gain representation on the councils. So for them, it will be, and the councils are not very big, let's face it. In most cases, the municipal councils in lots of rural towns is rather small. So if you have 10 or 20 people, you would rather have a lot of them work together than 10 going in one direction and the other 10 in another direction. So I think it is the experience of local government that influenced this result. In bigger places like, for instance, Johannesburg, I mean, it is a huge council, and you can tolerate strong differences in a huge council. But in a little town, if the council is fighting, it is actually very detrimental to the situation in the council, in the town, or in the district.
Marie, what did you make of the supporters, EFF supporters in particular, quite willing to go into coalition arrangements after the elections? They're supporting that fully, and you'd think that supporters of the EFF want to rule or have nothing at all.
Yes, I think that's the impression that's created, but 39% of EFF supporters say that they will support coalitions fully. A further 34% say they just want to see how it works out first. I must say all the coalitions in some of the not so conspicuous metropolitan areas where the EFF was involved in some areas was actually working quite well. Again, coming back to the issue of little towns where there are only a few councillors and they are bound to work together. They don't really have a choice. So I think that is where this comes from. And I also think the EFF, we perhaps should not always think they are always on the non-cooperation side and totally anarchistic in their views about local government. I think very strongly the EFF wants a say in local government. And if it comes through working together with other parties, that might be the second prize, but it is a good prize.
Right. Just a final thought from you, Marie. We also did a survey around the most popular candidates in Joburg, one of the hotly contested metros. Very interestingly, Herman Mashaba came out tops. Now, the candidates were rated between 0 and 10, and he scored around 4.49. And then we saw the ANC candidate, or the possible candidate there, and the DA candidate coming in quite closely at around 3.3. Your thoughts on the fact that Herman Mashaba has garnered so much support in Johannesburg?
I think his profile as a former mayor of the city counts for a lot. So people already know him. They know what happened during the time when he was the mayor. And there might be more of an element of trust and knowledge about him coming into these results, whereas the other two candidates are not that well known. So I think that is where the public sentiment swings towards his side.
Very interesting data. And of course, Marie, you'll continue to unpack a lot of what's coming out, some interesting things that we're going to be presenting to our viewers in the coming days and on the day of election. So I suppose we'll be speaking again tomorrow. Marie Harris, who's the Ipsos SA director, unpacking some of the sentiments around the local government elections.